Commodore was also exhibiting at the Multimedia Showcase, unveiling its newest Amiga, the Model 1200, which is a low-cost version of the Amiga 4000. Despite the price of only $699 for the entire system, it comes bundled with built-in customized sound and graphics chips, no add-ons required for multimedia. Commodore owned the multimedia market 5 years ago, must have been looking at this Multimedia Showcase with a combination of satisfaction and frustration.
Welcome to the second part in this Amiga 1200 system restore series. A quick recap on part 1. We found some surprises. Cleaned the rather furry looking keyboard and had a go at retrobrighting the keys. Replaced all the capacitors and then gave the system a quick test. If you want to see the whole video, I've popped a link to part 1 in this video description. So on with part 2, and we need to do something about that case. Really, there's no solution for this other than to just replace the top cover. Thankfully eBay has been kind recently. I managed to pick up a top and bottom cover for £15. Overall it's in great condition, especially when compared with the last case, but there are a couple of things we do need to do to it first. One is to replace the feet on the bottom, as 2 of them have deteriorated over the years. There's also some slight yellowing across the top left hand corner. So whilst it's completely dismantled, I'm going to retrobright it. The first thing to do is remove the case badge. I'm doing this by heating it up with a hairdryer, then using the flat round end of a screwdriver bit just to fit through the hole in the case to push the badge off. Take your time with this as you don't want to bend it. You can see here the colour of the plastic underneath the badge compared to the rest. Hopefully retrobrighting will fix that. So the same as last time, I'm just adding 12% hydrogen peroxide to warm water. I'll leave it out all day again, just coming out to move it around every hour or so. We'll check how this is getting on later. Next, let's remove the status LEDs off the old top cover. And whilst we're here, let's save this case badge. It's even still got the protective plastic on it. Let's take a look at those keycaps we started retrobrighting in part 1. These have been out in the sun for 2 whole days now, so hopefully that should be enough to make a difference. I've given these a good rinse off under some tap water, and now I'm just going to lightly dry them with a towel. Okay, so there's still some slight yellowing, but overall they look fantastic and way better than before. So now we're happy with our keycaps, it's time to go and replace them back onto the keyboard. I do the metal bars and the bigger keys first, as you have the most amount of space to work with when all of the other keys are removed. Now it's time to fit the space bar. This actually has 3 springs, the one in the middle is the same as the rest of the keys, but the 2 on the outside are smaller, so it's worth keeping these 2 separated when you're working on the keyboard. First, start by sliding the metal bar into one side of the keycap. And then the other side. Replace all of the 3 springs. Then clip the key back on with a firm press. That's the hardest key done. Now to continue with the rest. One thing to note is the 2 blank keys are slightly different sizes. The taller one is for the bottom row of keys, and the shorter one goes next to the return key. So after being fully cleaned and retrobrighted, Our keyboard's ready to go back into our Amiga 1200. So whilst our case is still enjoying the sun outside, let's have a look at what's in that desktop dynamite pack we got with our Amiga. First off, we've got a workbench manual, then the manual for the computer itself, the manual for Deluxe Paint 4, our Deluxe Paint registration card, some A1200 manual corrections, instructions for fitting a UK plug. You'd never see this with a computer now. The manual for Dennis, some more manual errors, and the manual for Oscar. Over in the left hand side we've got our digital word worth and print manager discs. Our Dennis discs still sealed, which is nice but no surprise. Our Deluxe Paint 4 discs. Oscar discs which are also still sealed. There's also word worth manuals and this handy poster which demos all the fonts available. Well, in typical UK style, it's now gone cloudy, so it's time to bring in our Amiga case and have a look. Here it is having a quick shower to remove all of the peroxide. There's still a tiny bit of yellow towards that top corner, but overall I'm really happy with the outcome. Here it is next to the old case. The next thing to do is remove those old feet and apply some nice new ones. These were really stuck on, so heating them up with a hairdryer made it much easier to get them off. Here's the new feet. These came from Retro Bench and are perfect replacements for the Amiga. They look as good as new. Now for that drive. I've come to the conclusion that this also needs to be replaced. It's not designed to fit in the Amiga case, which is why the previous owner decided to cut the case to make it fit. Again, the eBay gods have been kind, as I managed to find a genuine replacement Amiga 1200 drive, complete with the eject button, which itself is very difficult to find. Here's the drives together just so you can see how different they are. So that completes our shopping list and everything we need. It's time to rebuild this Amiga. I'll start by fitting the board back into the case. Next, let's fit the replacement floppy drive. We need to remove the brackets from the old drive. Then the new one can be secured with the two screws underneath the case. Then the one through the bracket. Next, I'll replace the power and data cables for the drive. This Amiga didn't come with a hard drive originally, so I'm going to add a compact flash card to the IDE port on the board. I've already set this one up with classic Workbench using WinUAE, so if everything is working, our A1200 should boot straight into Workbench. I'm using a couple of layers of double-sided foam tape to hold this down. Next, it's time to refit the Magnum RAM expansion. If you've ever installed an expansion card into one of these, you'll know it can be a tricky task. I always do it with the top cover off and the keyboard removed. And then once the card is lined up, I use the ends from two pairs of tweezers to help push it into the edge connector. just use gentle pressure on each side to make sure it's nice and snug. Time to fit that nice clean keyboard. Again with this, just pull the edges up of the connector. Then carefully feed the ribbon cable in. Finally, push both sides of the connector back down. Time to fit the top cover, and first we need to clip the top edge together, then fits the 6 case screws underneath. Next I'll replace the trapdoor cover. And one final touch, replace the case badge. Well, it's powered up and booted into Workbench just fine. However, it wasn't long before I spotted a problem. The spacebar in this Amiga isn't working. I absolutely should have tested the keyboard first. I know all of the keycaps and the membrane are clean, so I'm not sure what the problem is. After quite a bit more testing, I figured out that the spacebar is the only key not working. And after looking a bit closer at the membrane, I could see a tiny bit of corrosion to one of the traces that runs to the spacebar contacts. I've used tweezers to remove some of the top plastic here to gain access to the trace underneath. You can see here that in the middle there's absolutely no trace left whatsoever. Thankfully this trace is easy to get to, so I'm attempting to fix this with conductive ink. The ink I'm using is called CW2000 from Circuit Works. I'll link to this in the description. It's not the prettiest fix in the world, but a quick test with the multimeter and there's now a connection between the two pads. The conductive ink needs some time to cure before it's fully conductive, so I let it dry overnight, and then gave it a quick test in the morning. I'm relieved to say that we now have a fully working spacebar again, which also means that it's finally time to have some fun with this Amiga 1200. First thing we need to do is test that new floppy drive. So I'm going to do that by installing Alien Breed's Tower Assault. Looking good so far. A few minutes later and we're able to load the game. So our new floppy drive is working well.
Follows.
We can see in Workbench that our Magnum RAM expansion has given us 4 MB of fast memory, so in sysinfo it gives us a respectable score of 2.86 MIPS, a nice boost over a standard A1200. Let's try out some of the slightly more demanding titles for the system. Breathless is great fun and really stresses any Amiga system. Full screen we can see it's definitely a bit on the slow side. And pretty much unplayable when set to 1:1 pixel size. Next we have the beast, which is Alien Breed 3D2, the Killing Grounds. Released in 1996, this game is renowned for stressing even the most powerful of Amigas. This is only just playable with the screen at half size, and virtually unplayable full screen, which is unsurprising really. The box does recommend an 030 accelerator or faster, which brings us on to the last surprise we've got for this A1200. It's a Phase 5 Blizzard 1230 Mark IV from 1996. This particular card has 64 megabytes of memory. According to the flyer in our Alien Breed box, this should get us 7 times the performance of a standard Amiga 1200 at 9.9 MIPS. So let's get it fitted. Then it's straight into sysinfo. It's a massive improvement and is very nearly hitting its claimed speed. We're getting 9.7 MIPS here. Not bad considering it's 25 years old. Back into Breathless, and the difference is amazing. Even at 1x1 pixel size, it's running at more than an acceptable speed. And now we've got more processing power, we can play things like Wolfenstein 3D. And whilst it is probably more playable on a DOS PC, it's definitely welcomed here and still fun to play. Back to the killing grounds, and we're nearly at full screen with a half decent frame rate. It's certainly more playable now. This game really needs an 060 accelerator to shine, but considering the prices those currently go for, I think I'm more than happy with this performance. And finally, with the extra grunt in our Amiga, we can add a new game to our list. One that many Amiga 1200 owners would have longed for back in the day. It's Doom. And we can see with the Blizzard 1230 installed it runs very well. I'd have been more than happy with this in the 90s. So that concludes this system restore series on the Amiga 1200. I'd say that's another Amiga brought back to its former glory. It's had a new case, a new floppy drive, all new capacitors, a full clean from head to toe, and a very nice accelerator card added. It's now a very capable machine, which is now set to be used and enjoyed for hopefully another 25 years.